All right, we are live. I hope you guys can hear me okay. It's really hard to tell with the condenser mic on my end whether you guys can hear it or not. So as people show up in the chats, just let me know if you have trouble with volume or anything like that. So special Father's Day edition of my live stream where I'm going to work on more thumbnails for book 2 of 2 stories. I missed a day working on my comic, actually a couple days. And so the reason I missed them is I was basically working on doing book layouts and like they were like rush things for like a client. And so that kind of occupied a couple of my nights for like three nights or so. But the cool thing is during the day today, I managed to get one done. And we're getting closer and closer to the end of book 2, which is what I've been working on in these live streams for the thumbnails, not the full book. I wish it was like we're really close to the finish line on the book in general, but we're not. So anyhow, if you're new to this live stream, let me explain who I am. I'm Joshua Kemble. I've been a professional illustrator and graphic designer for over 15 years. And when I'm not doing that and then being a dad to my kid and occupied like doing a bunch of other stuff like freelance and things like that, when I'm not doing those things, I'm working on comics, indie comics in particular. My favorite kind of comics to do are autobiographical in nature. And so kind of trying to carry on the traditions of like Robert Crumb and like Harvey Pekar and Art Spiegelman and stuff like that. Obviously, I don't know if I'm in the same league as those guys. I really sincerely wouldn't put myself even close to the same league as those guys, but that's kind of my ambition and interest in comics right now. So that being said, I did, I should also mention, so what I'll be working on this stream is 2 stories, book 2, and 2 stories book 1 is a 122-page graphic novel. It's a confessional memoir that grapples with questions of faith, mental illness, depravity, and ultimately redemption in a fallen world. And that is available at bookstores and comic shops all over the place. But right now it's at like a really reduced rate on Amazon. So I'm pointing people there just because if you have Prime, it's free shipping, and that's pretty awesome. So I definitely would recommend if you want to save some cash, like that might be the place to go. Other than that, go to your LCS, like your local comic book shop, and request that they order it and carry it in their store. Okay, so all that's out of the way. So I'm working on book 2, and I'm doing the thumbnails and rough art for those pages. And the cool thing is, I'm right now I'm roughing out page 133, and I have about that much left. That's it. Just like about maybe 2 pages in comics. That's what that would equate to in script, which is pretty exciting because I've been carving away at this thing for a while now. So it just reinforces my constant belief in comics. I'm a relatively slow comic artist. It takes me a long time to do these things. It took me about 4 or 5 years to do 2 stories, book 1. And obviously that's not like being able to have like these long 8-hour windows a day or anything like that. Like I have a day job to go to as an art director, but it's still like they take an incredibly long amount of time for me to complete. But the thing that I like about comics is it's like a turtle's pace. But the cool thing is if you keep at it and you kind of carve at it daily, you end up with books under your belt just regardless because you're putting in the work. And that's like the big trick that I think a lot of young cartoonists may not know. It's like the big trick to making comics is you just make them on a daily basis. And then the next thing you know, you have like graphic novels and stuff done, which is pretty cool. So yeah, so that's one thing. Another thing, sometimes I'll have like a local micro beer or something like that when I'm doing these streams. And tonight I'm having a glass of red wine, partially because we have my wife's sister is staying with us, and we cracked open a bottle of red wine, and then she didn't really like the flavor. So I'm like, oh crap, well now I got to drink it before before it goes bad, which is like a typical wino excuse for drinking wine. But in this case, it's literally true, because I think we got about another day on that bottle before it goes bad. So lucky me, because I love red wine. So I'll be drinking that as I'm working on comics. And then a little other thing, just as a follow-up for people who follow this channel before I get into doing the art. What you're looking at right now is actually page 132, which I did today during the day off stream, because it's really hard to stream when like my son's running around and being goofy and like everybody's kind of active around the house. But anyhow, so that's what you're looking at right now. But if you follow this channel, you'll know that I was considering just roughly, like, I have a finished graphic novel called Jacob's Apartment that I did before Two Stories Book 1. It's full color. It's 128 pages. And I just kind of randomly thought, like, hey, maybe I should talk to my literary agent, see if she wants to shop this around. And then, like, honestly, it might be something Marcosia would have interest in publishing as well. So we're going to pitch it around. And so that was one of my little homework assignments on my own personal comic projects this weekend, was to build a pitch packet, which is no small feat. But luckily, the cool thing is we'll see what my literary agent says. There might be some like massive revisions on it. But in general, like, the nice thing is once you have kind of like the pitch packet, your like proposal drafted for like one book, because they're similar in genre, it's like a little bit easier to make the next one, because you can kind of just modify, obviously, like plot points and descriptions of like like in this case the book's a different size and stuff like that. But I managed to get that done, so I'm pretty excited. So first draft is out and sent to my literary agent. So that's going to be being shopped around. I have another book that I did a 5-page pitch for that's written by my sister that's being shopped around currently. And so I feel like just having those things in the ether circulating to different publishers is good while I'm working on the second one, which obviously is going to be put out through Marcosia Enterprises. That being said, like, I like the idea of having those things kind of doing some passive work while I'm doing this active work. But maybe that's a crazy idea. We'll see. Okay, so now let's get into it. So basically, what I do at the beginning of these every stream is like break the previous page into panels that I can reference. And so that's what we're going to start with. And I'll just talk about random stuff. So I did finally end up getting to go for a bike ride. And I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's like I was kind of thinking about potentially biking and doing like that as like the exercise that I'll do every other day. I do like a rowing machine, and hold on a second, just splitting up these panels. So I'll do like a rowing machine and do like a mile to a mile and a half of that every other day. And then like some free weights and stuff. And that's good for like upper body workout, and also for just like sort of keeping my heart healthy and staving off the impending weight that seems to want to happen once you're past 40. It's like just weight does not want to not add to your body. Like I think most people struggle with that. So anyhow, so I am actively doing that, and I've built a really good habit of it. But I was thinking partially because my son is like still learning how to bike, and there's things that are easier to like show by doing rather than show by like trying to hop on his bike and be like, here's how you pedal, like, because I can't fit on his bike. So so that's part of the thinking. And then the other thinking was just like, I used to bike all the time, like out of need, not for exercise, just like to get around, just miles and miles and miles of biking when I was in art school. Cause like I could barely afford, rent for like my really crappy studio apartment. And so like, much less like affording like car payments or like insurance would have just made it impossible for me to live there at the time. Cause I was pretty poor at the time. So I used to bike like from downtown Long Beach to campus, Cal State Long Beach, with like a big old portfolio case like hanging from my from my back, and I got through school that way. So it was a good like 2 or 3 ish years like where I just did that, and I loved it. Like I mean, it was a drag on nights where you just didn't feel up to it, but I actually enjoyed the process of doing it, and so yeah, so there's that. So I was just thinking about all those things, and I was realizing like I'm not really one for jogging. Like I don't want to mess up my knees and stuff like that. So biking just sounds like something I'd have fun doing because I enjoy it. And so I got a cheap bike, and bike nerds will just poke fun at the fact I just got like a Walmart bike. But I figured I don't want to like invest in like some hugely expensive bike if I'm not gonna like commit to it and do it daily. So anyhow, so I did my first bike ride the other day. I got about a mile, which to me is not super impressive on a bike, but it was like 104 degrees out. And so that was fun. So anyhow, that's a bike update also for people who are curious. And yeah, let's get into some pages now that I've rambled about bicycles and project pitches and all that stuff. All right, here we go. And again, if you guys are watching along live, like hopefully you're getting decent audio. It's really hard to check on my end with this mic. I don't know why this mic in particular. I used to be on like a little snowball, and then I switched to a condenser mic, which I think has better quality. But again, if you guys have trouble hearing me or anything like that, just let me know. All right, so here we go. Of course, if you're watching this after the fact, maybe just let me know in the comments. But it'll probably be a little too late to adjust the volume there, but at least I'll know for future ones. All right, so here we go. And we are going to get into this page and rock in some pages like the Casbah that they are. All right. Oh, I forgot to mention too. So I also play in a band for fun called No Saboteurs. And there's footage of us like playing live shows and stuff on my YouTube channel if you want to dig around. And it's a little bit different from like the solo music stuff that I do as kind of a hobby for fun. It's like a legit band. But you know, during the pandemic, our drummer actually moved to a different state. And then we weren't able to play for about like a month or so. Our old bassist is MIA. And so on Saturday, we had our first like practice with a new drummer, which went really well, and a new bassist. So we'll probably be doing more practices and stuff like that. But that was exciting too, to kind of get that process going. And it was super fun. And kind of much like comics, it's like the first, hour or so of our practice, we just sounded terrible. Because we're teaching the drummer the new songs, and we only for 4 hours of practice, maybe got through 3 songs, but just repeating them a bunch. But the cool thing is you repeat the song a couple times, and then the next thing you know, you're playing the songs and you remember all the parts, and everybody starts learning their parts. And so much like comics, you kind of keep at it, you practice, you show up, and then the next thing you know, you have a band that can play songs live, which is cool. But yeah, so that was fun. And that is like strict hobby stuff, not anything where I'm aiming for like a record deal or something, We might play some bar shows though once we get some songs down. That'll be fun. So okay. And I think I included, I got to look at the line. the last line that I included here. Yes, okay, like as soon as possible. That was the last one. So we're at a point in the story where there's like a conversion that's happened, like a religious conversion. And nervously, I'm calling who's at the time of the story like my fiance, and like kind of going, how am I going to tell her about this conversion and stuff? And then it's found out that like she had converted as well. And so we're sort of piecing that together, and that's kind of the part in the story we're at, which is very close to the very end. So this is kind of like the culmination of the whole story. So if you're seeing this, I guarantee it's not a spoiler that's going to ruin your want to buy the book, because my thumbnails are nowhere near as pretty as my finished pages. All right, so here we go. Okay. But yeah, it felt really good to, it's also just a weird thing because until getting vaccinated, it's like I didn't really feel comfortable hanging out with people, you know? And then we do at most maybe like get together in a backyard, 6 feet apart with like some family, and then like have masks on and stuff like that. And it was really still a nice way to see people, but it's like to be able to just hang out in a tiny room and play rock and roll feels pretty good, like without masks, because we're all vaccinated. It's kind of a cool experience. It's weird, you miss things like being able to give somebody a hug, or just like little things that I wonder, I'm sure like 5 years from now I'm not going to think twice about, but now they just feel so kind of precious and worthwhile, because we haven't had that experience for like a year. So it's very nice. It was very nice to have that. Okay. If you're new to this live stream as well, I will just give you a heads up that I ramble quite a bit. That's what I do. There was a line in Reservoir Dogs where they said, "Okay, ramblers, let's get rambling." And I always jokingly refer to that as like a good description of my communication style. Okay. So this is a long conversation sequence, and because of that, I'm trying to change the viewpoints a lot. It inevitably is going to have some talking heads, and not like the band, like the talking heads that you don't want to have too often appearing in comics. Although I kind of wonder if that's where maybe they came up with their name. Like maybe they were watching a bunch of soap operas and they're like, it's like a bunch of talking heads. Now I'm at some point I'm going to have to Google that and go down that rabbit hole and find out how they came up with their name. I'm sure it's available information in this day and age. All right, so here we go. So I have had a lot of talking heads in the last page or two, so I think at this point I need to find a way to deviate from that. Let's see here. I'm going to need to deviate from that. So let's see. We have our character kind of sitting. Okay. Maybe I can get away with another talking head. Okay. This will be the last, hopefully the last talking head. I already know how I want this to end, so I have to be really careful as I get closer to that final page that I'm kind of structuring things to where I can bring them to that close, because the end is going to be a literal reverse. Well, I shouldn't say literal, but a reverse of the first page of Two Stories Book One. It even has a similar framing device, and so it's really going to be important and might require some reworking to get there if I don't end up getting there as well. The other thing is my page count is a little off because the book will have chapter breaks. So those chapter break pages, each one is going to add probably about 2 pages. And then Gary just joined and said, "Hey, brother, how you doing? How's it going, Gary? Happy Father's Day." And Gary's going to say, "But I'm not a father." And I'm going to say, "Yes, you are, of Dinosaurs versus Marsbots. That's your baby." Huh? No? Did that joke fall flat? I actually am a dad, so I can get away with really crappy dad jokes like that. I hope, especially on Father's Day. I should be able to get away with a bad dad joke. Did that land at all, Gary, or was that just awful? Yeah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. That's Gary being merciful because it is Father's Day. He's like, ha ha ha, it's Father's Day. I'll give you a laugh. That's okay. Anyhow. Okay. And I just realized I just get, yeah, he was like, "I'll accept it. Yes." Okay, good. Thank you, Gary. How are you doing, Gary? And what are you working on, sir? And how do you feel? I feel like you do a pretty good job of doing long conversation sequences that don't have like a billion talking heads. You draw interest in a lot of it's like the visual acting of the characters, but you'll have moments where you'll like zoom in on a cigarette or something like that just to kind of break it up. But I don't know. For me, that's always a concern when doing these things. I also need to think. Okay, he's going to be saying we. So E, like that. Hey, okay, here we go. The weird things we do as cartoonists, where we're just like randomly making a weird face, like E. Okay, that's how I need to draw the face that I'm drawing. I swear, if people just had raw footage of an artist drawing, just their face while they were drawing, out of context, they would think it was like footage from like an insane asylum. Gary said, "Today is a little video day, cutting a little combo DVSM ad and plug for Comics Wellspring, and a short video introducing the YouTube channel. Comics Wellspring." I am forgetting what Comics Wellspring is. Comics. Isn't that a printer? I got to remember. Hey, yeah, there you go. Is that where you print DVSM? Because they do a pretty beautiful job, especially the blacks are really nice. They're nice and black as opposed to like the grayed out blacks that you get sometimes when you print things. So I feel like they do a fairly decent job with that. Okay, he's on a phone, so that hand didn't make any sense. All right. And just as a heads up, I will let you guys know I am very familiar with drinking beer, and I drink wine a lot less. So if I start getting slurry, give me a heads up. And if not, I still have like another glass that I might have before the end of this stream. So hopefully at some point we're going to get kind of slurry here. That's right. And Gary said, yeah, I'm very happy with their work. Their customer service is solid and best of all, physical proofs. And that is not a paid endorsement on my part. Is it on yours, Gary? Can I trust what you say? I'm just kidding. Actually, by saying that, like you'll see guys in black just appear in like black suits and they're just going to drag me off screen. I'll come back and be like, I absolutely love this printer. All right, you guys. We're about 26 minutes in, and I got to pick up the pace because I have thumbnailed one panel. And I am doing, tighter thumbnails than most, and that hopefully will save me, I really hope my theory on that saving me time toward the end is correct. But still, I gotta pick up the pace here. Then Gary says no pay, so you guys can hold him to that. They're doing a featured artist thing once a week. Oh, and offered to feature me, so I cut a 45-second trailer thing. Smart. I hope that leads to more readers of your work, because I think win-wins like that in business, as corny as it is, I know that's like something you hear in like corporate meetings a lot, where it's like, we need a win-win here, and it sounds like jargon that they would say on like Wall Street or something. At least maybe that's the way it sounds to me a lot of the time, like corporate speak, words like win-win. But in business, you do really want to seek out win-wins. Like the best forms of business, the best forms of relationships are win-wins, where it's like, hey, I'll mention these people, they mention me, we all benefit from it. That's like the ultimate, thing. And I think that's a smart business move on their part to be like, hey, do you want to be featured? Because they probably have a following of a bunch of people who like comics and print comics. And then also the people who print comics like no other cartoonists. Like we're a small knit community, so it's a smart call. All right, here we go. That's problematic because the phone's right there, and I'm doing like the 1940s phone line. Pikachu tail, lightning bolt. I should just start calling that a Pikachu tail. I wouldn't have even known, frankly, what a Pikachu tail looks like because I'm an old man. But my son is like getting really into Pokemon. And so now I know. And I have to say, it looks pretty fun. My wife played my kid. He's got a couple decks to play with, and it seems pretty awesome. And I can tell you from my limited experience just observing them playing, my son has a VMAX deck, so if you guys play Pokemon, let me know. But I guess a VMAX deck is like destruction to a basic deck, because my wife and my son were playing each other, and Benji was taking a lot of hits. Like she was kind of taking down a couple of his Pokemon that were on his, like, there's like this field. What is that called? The thing where they have the Pokemon on? It's like 5 spaces or something. I can't remember. The arena? The bench. Okay, so she had like Ben had 5 Pokemon on the bench. She had like taken out 2 of his Pokemon where they had to retreat and like he had to swap them with other ones on the bench in the arena. So he's down to like 2 Pokemon left. And then he draws one of his VMAX characters, puts that sucker in play, and like just demolishes, like destroys. It was devastation. It was like there was no fighting it. Once you have, I don't know, it seems to me from my limited experience just observing this one battle that when you bring VMAX cards into the equation, it's like bringing an atomic bomb to a gunfight. You know, it's pretty insane. So anyhow, there you go. Limited knowledge of Pokemon. Why did I bring that up? Because I'm going to start calling those little radio tails, the little lightning tails, I'm going to start calling those Pikachu tails because they do look like that. All right. This and more content you guys can get from this amazing channel. That's cool, though. So, Gary, you're working on editing? And then I also need to do my reading tonight. So hopefully I can do that because I have some reading I need to do. Let's see here. All right. There's one panel. On to panel 2. Exciting times, you guys. Exciting, thrilling adventures that we are sharing together. Frank just said, hey, guys. Hey, Frank. How you doing? Nice. Cut the CWS video together, and now I want to do my YouTube greeting vid. Yeah, I need to do a full-out greeting video. I think so far my video is just a trailer for 2 stories. Something I should do, were I to have endless time or like a bunch of assistants, would be to go through the live streams, because I love these live streams, and clip out like best of kind of stuff, like shorter clips of conversations and stuff that have happened. I think would be really cool. Frank said, I finished the card sets I was working on. And you missed my whole Pokemon conversation. Possibly. I don't know. I don't know if you heard the whole Pokemon conversation. But I think it's awesome that you actually committed and made that, Frank. That's awesome. We had a joke a couple casts back that we were talking about chick tracts and how I'm not personally a fan of chick tracts. And then we were joking that we should make like a Pokemon card game that's like a chick tract. And then it would be like, you gotta catch them all, huh? No? That's anyhow. It was a bad joke, but it was awesome. And what Frank did was actually make the cards, which is awesome. So he made little cards of like me. I think did you make Gary? I got to look at it again. I know you made yourself as Captain Goggles. It's all of us as kids, I think. And then I think it's Scott Cirkland. I'm pretty sure that's the 4. But that's hilarious and kind of made my day when I saw that on Instagram. And then the card of me was like based on the Kid Josh character that I have in the first book, which is really cool. Yeah. So Gary, Scott, Josh, and me. Yep. Said. Thank you, Frank. That was fun. All right. So this is going to be okay, this one's going to be, this is where I want to pull away a little bit. Like, I think I'm going to do an overhead and then start pulling out of the building. Or I might use iconography, but I need to do something to change it up from talking heads at this point. Oh, I will say doing roughs with text was like a long, like avoided thing for me. I used to do thumbnails without compensating for like space for text, or even like, or I would just do like lines, like just gestural lines, to kind of try to roughly accommodate for the amount of space I needed. What ended up happening from that is I'd make a lot of panels where I did unnecessary amounts of artwork, because I wasn't including the type with the final, and also where I would have to like squeeze text to fit in spaces, and so there was a lot of variation in text size on my older comics, or just like having to completely cut and modify a panel and then cover up like a bunch of stuff that I didn't need to draw in the first place. So that's part of why I meticulously like write out, even at the rough stage, like, so I have a better rough idea of how much space I need. And then I usually end up with a little bit too much space, which is far better than too little space. So that's something to kind of keep in mind when you're little tip there that I learned the hard way by avoiding doing it this way. Okay. Cautious about it and pray about it. And then Frank said he sent me a set. I'm excited. I'll have to show him on the stream when I get him. And then he said, I don't know if Scott knows about it, so I might catch him by surprise to get a card of him. That's awesome. I think that'll be pretty awesome. Yeah, I think Scott will be pretty stoked. Okay. So it never, I don't think like anyone... I don't think any artist gets offended by getting like a drawing of themselves from someone. That's a very flattering, awesome thing. I guess unless you're like drawing the kind of doodles we all probably did in class, where you're like, my teacher has a really funny hairline or something, like, and then you're doing like kind of caricatures of your teacher. Those I can understand why my teachers got annoyed by those. Did you guys do that at all? Did you guys ever get in trouble for drawing doodles in class that weren't kind about other people? I think mine weren't even unintended. Like, the weird thing is, I think as a young artist, it's like I would do it without intending to kind of... It was like almost like practicing real caricature, which, by the way, most people don't want to see real caricature. Because if you really caricature someone and you take all of the just like worst, weirdest, most unique, quirky features of somebody and exaggerate them, like, most people look like monsters, right? So like most caricature artists kind of dumb down the caricature and make it complimentary and nice to the person, right? So you're like, okay, this person has like a large forehead with a receding hairline, but I'm going to kind of exaggerate it, but in a complimentary way, right? But like a legit caricature, like a Mad Magazine style caricature, would just be like, that forehead would suddenly be like the size of a football field, and like the receding hairline would just be extra receding, right? And I used to do that to my teachers when I was like, when they would talk, because I'm trying to focus in school and stuff. I would always doodle and draw, pictures often of my teachers, and that would get me into some trouble. Most of it was kind of what Gary was saying. He was saying, I don't remember getting in trouble for them being of people, but I was constantly getting in trouble for doodling, distracting people with my doodles, and doodling on my book cover or desk, or yeah. And then I definitely had some doodles on the desk, and I think I had a few like moments when I got into punk rock where I did the carving into the desk. I was like, I'm gonna carve the Crass logo on this desk because that's just awesome. Anyhow, interesting times. All right, let's get into this. Frank was saying, same as Gary, I got in trouble for drawing on desks at school, but that was pretty. I was pretty dark and would draw satanic stuff. I had issues. Yeah, I kind of think a lot of us had issues at the time, and then I think some of it's just like that sort of like kid fascination with like metal. I don't know, which I still kind of like a little bit of metal, but there's definitely like an era where like drawing violence is really fun. I think like so Jim Lujan, we had him on Artcasters. He recommended this YouTube channel, and I should highly recommend this for anyone. It's called Power Comics, and it's amazing. It's like they go through like self-published comics that were made, most of them specifically in like the 80s and then the early 90s, that are not like most indie comics, where like a lot of indie comics are like trying to be indie, like they're trying to do things outside of like the mainstream of like what Marvel or DC is doing. These are guys who like are sincerely like wanting to do like what all the legends in the mainstream industry are doing. And some of them actually think they are doing that when they're publishing these things. But a lot of them are like made by like 15-year-old kids. So like they're amazing because a lot of them are like made by like metalheads, and somehow like they convince their dad or like their church or like somebody else to like publish like a comic and like legit distribute it. And this was before Diamond kind of had a stranglehold on the whole distro industry. So self-publishers had a lot of options for like people they could distro with. And so like there's just these fascinating comics, and they're like they're kind of barometer for like the ones that they review on this YouTube channel are kind of comics that are like they're terrible, like they're terribly executed. But they're like an Ed Wood movie where it's like beautifully terrible, where it's like when they're executing these comics, like they're putting their heart and soul into it, and like rendering the hell out of it, and like doing their best try to be like Buscema or like like or Ditko or something. Like they're just really like, just you can tell the sincerity when you look at these things. But they are technically like totally off. Like the perspective's off. The drawings are bad. Like but there's something really beautiful and amazing about it. And I will say, like Jim recommended it because he knew I really like Night Business, which is this kind of amazing comic where the artist, I think intentionally, is making like a comic that's done in like a naive style, but done in a naive style like so slickly and like, so it almost feels like the kind of comic I would have made in like 7th grade, but like done as badass as you could do it, but with the aesthetic preferences of like of where I was at when I was that age. Um, and he co-hosts a lot of the creator of Night Business co-hosts a lot of the shows. So anyhow, that's like my new obsession. I was listening to that. That's another reason I didn't live stream when I worked on a page earlier today. I was like obsessively listening to their reviews on that channel because it's just super amazing. And you said like the equivalent of a low budget horror movie. Yeah. And and the neat thing is their barometer for it is it can't like, it has to be like authentic. It actually can't be like Snakes on a Plane. It has to be like um like a good horror movie that was like really trying, but it just failed, but it's like an epic failure. Like it's kind of charming and amazing because of that. So anyhow, I recommend it. Power Comics. I've only watched like maybe 7 of their videos, but I highly recommend. I think people who like our stuff would be really into that. Um, so anyhow, so that was cool. Okay, I don't want to, and it's not end, it's wind. Yeah, it's a great channel, and the hosts are really funny. And one of them, Benjamin Mara, is like I said, he's kind of a creative genius, and he's the guy who created like Night Business, and he did a whole bunch of other comics that are all like B comics, and I think he's intentionally making them B comics, but these are like a lot of these comics are like what probably influenced a lot of his work and stuff. It's great stuff. It's really good. Um, I would highly recommend it. Okay. That being said, let's get back into this. Be some mouthpiece of the okay. So what's funny is this section in the comic I'm working on was a concern of ours at the time and has never ceased to be a tough part of being a believer who's not like a hardcore Republican. Um, it's it's a hard thing to find this kind of thing, but it's interesting because that was like a big concern after my wife and I sort of were saved. Like we were like, okay, we want to find a place, but we just want to make sure we're not in like some propaganda building for a political party, you know. Let's see here. What are you working on, Frank? Now, are you wrapped up the cards? So I'm curious what you're working on, buddy. Okay, and here I think I was going to switch to like an overhead. And again, these are just thumbs, just kind of figuring it out. And we're going to be avoiding tangents there. Yeah, Gary, it'll be up your alley to that channel. I can pretty much guarantee you'll be interested. I will say, like, I'm super, like, I'm actually like kind of on board with some of the Power comics too. Like, there's a whole bunch that they've gone through. Like, the first video is about a comic called John Tar, and I kind of want to own a copy now. It's kind of amazing, and it's very much like you described, Gary, where it's like the appeal of I don't know, it's like it's almost more awesome that it's like untrained than I don't know. It's just got like a magic pulpy like B movie quality to it that you just kind of like I don't know, you can't get from somebody just not like pouring their heart out with like no training or skill. I don't know if that makes sense. Not that they didn't have skill, because it's like still skillful, but it's like there's just something really charming about it and kind of awesome, because like the artists are like going for broke on it, like they're spending a ton of time like making these pages, and but they're just like like impossible to follow, or like like you can kind of see a glimpse of their vision, but like they're just kind of failing at it, and it's just awesome. I don't know, it's a really cool thing. So that's my favorite discovery of like the last few days, and thanks to Jim Lujan for recommending that. And I know Jim watches these live streams like after the fact, so Jim, if you're watching like about an hour in, thanks for the recommendation. That was good. Frank said he subbed to it too. Cool. Yeah, those dudes are like my new favorite thing. All right, here we go. And then this, to keep it interesting, I think this needs to actually pull out of the building again. Frank's like, I never liked that Jim Lujan fella. What are you talking about? Lujan's the best. All right, let's see here. This is me. I'm gonna borrow the previous like kind of pulling out of the building shot. That's right. Okay, Gary was saying, do you think there's more people who A, are good enough but don't make things, or B, aren't good enough but are just making anyway? I think like the cool thing about looking at things like power comics, or artists who are struggling to make comics, who are making comics, but like they make them and they're like, you can't make head or tail of like what way to read the panels, or like you're kind of following it, but you're like, I don't know where to go here, or like anatomy's warping all over the place, or it's an interesting thing, but it's like, I think it highlights how hard it is to actually make comics. And I'm not saying I've even gotten it down. I think I'd probably be on like the lower end of skill in comics, but I will say like most of my comics, I think you can read very clearly and you can kind of follow the story. And I think they effectively communicate what I'm trying to say. Maybe how effectively would be up for debate, but it's like, it's definitely like, I've studied sequential art enough to like be able to tell a story that you can follow from point A to point B to point C and so on. I think it's really hard. I think it's hard to make comics. I think it's hard to make good, clear, coherent comics. I think there are a lot of people who are good enough to do covers and good enough to do single illustrations. I think there's a ton of people who can do that. I think even the interesting thing about the power comics thing is a lot of those people are like not bad illustrators. They just like, you can get the sense, well, some of them are 15. And so in that case, like, hell, when I was 15, like I couldn't draw like half the guys doing those power comics, which is rad. Like they kind of had the skills that I was honing at that time, but they just like went full bore and were like, no, I'm going to make the thing. I'm going to have it solicited and like put it in like stores and stuff like that. And good for them, but there's some that are like, by older folks as well, and it's just like the attempt, like an honest attempt, but it's just a really hard thing to do. So I guess my answer, I know that's a long-winded thing, but my answer is, I think there are a lot of people who maybe aren't good enough but are making anyway. But I kind of would give those people credit because at least they're fighting and trying. And then sometimes that ends up with really cool results. Like the cool thing about the power comics thing is like, it's kind of awesome to look at those. So I would hate a world where like those comics didn't exist because like they couldn't, foreshorten an arm. Because there's something awesome about seeing like a really badly foreshortened arm, but just like rendered the hell out of, where it's like, I know this arm's not for, or like sausage fingers, but they're like rendered like, like the most like rendered beautiful sausage fingers you've ever seen. Like I think there's something about that makes them awesome. So but I would say I think there's people who I think the people who are good enough are making the things. I don't know if that makes sense, because I kind of think to do comics, you just do them. And like there's a lot of artists who I think would think it's easy. I think I would have probably had an assumption that comic making was easy when I was doing illustrations primarily. And I was like, okay, I'm ready for comics. And then I kind of bit off my first like 24 pager and I was like, oh, it was almost too much. And I'm sure, Gary, you had a similar experience where it was just like mind blowing the amount of things you have to consider, because you have to think of all the things you have to think of in a regular sequential narrative, but you have like 20-fold that because you have panels within the page, I don't know. So I hope did that answer your question, Gary, or did I just dance around your question? I would say I probably think there's a lot of people who are just making anyway who aren't good enough. What's interesting is I think a lot of the people who are making anyway who aren't good enough are going to get good enough if they're really trying, Yeah, and Gary was saying I definitely assumed comics would be easier, at least easier than other projects I was considering, but I was wrong. Yeah. And that's the hook, right? Because the second you do one, you're like, that was hard and impossible, but it's also super awesome because it is hard and impossible. It's and it makes you really appreciate, like for me, it makes me really, really admire people like Chris Ware or Steve Ditko. Anyone who can tell like a sequential narrative like in this seamless way where you aren't even thinking about it is just pretty incredible. So okay. And this is not going to be a panel here. It's going to say, okay, this is going to be a word balloon, you guys. Okay, here we go. And then we're almost at the hour mark. So I'm going to take my probably brief break after doing this panel. I usually take about a 20-second break at the hour mark. And I think I probably have about another hour in me. Oh, another cool thing about the Power Comics channel that I'm just gonna pretty much get everybody to unsubscribe to me and subscribe to this much better channel. I'm joking. Please don't unsubscribe from me, but I will recommend. Man, like they also have interviews. Like they track down some of the artists who did like things like John Tar, which is kind of epic, and find out more information. Like, and you usually find out like, oh yeah, this person was like mad super into metal, you know, or like they were like a 15-year-old kid, and it was like just this opportunity to like do this really cool black and white thing, and a lot of them like really admired. And when I think about it, it's like this stuff I was making, like I made comics at like 15. Like I made little stapled together zines, but like they were, I mean, if those things had gotten wide distribution, you know, they were just, you know, I mean, I'm sure they're charming in their own way, but like they were not, you know, not to the level of good. But then there's something awesome about that too, right? Like it's yeah, Jim just said just tuned in and so glad you checked out the Power Comics channel. Yeah, I'm obsessed with it. It's yeah, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, it's sort of my speed. Like I a lot of my my illustration career too outside of comics was like based on B pulp posters, you know, which a lot of those were not intentionally made to be as cheesy and wonderful as they are. Like they were just made to like get it out and get it printed like as soon as possible. So a lot of them were I mean, actually, like the whole history of like pulp covers and posters is fascinating. Like a lot of those illustrators, you know, like they weren't getting paid a lot. So they would do like, you know, a bad, cheesy pulp cover, you know, for like Amazing Fantasy #1 or whatever. And then they'd like flip it and do like a fully painted, like detective novel, like pulp cover on the other side in gouache because they literally had like no money to like pay for paper, so they would just print on the back. Like they'd buy, you know, like illustration board, or like even worse, like they just do it on like really thin bristle, but we're talking like full gouache paintings. And then they would flip them and use the back side of it, which isn't made for that, but they'd still use it just because, hey, it's a surface. And paint like these rad things. So a lot of like the corny aesthetic, and it's a beautiful, wonderful aesthetic, but like the pulpy aesthetic, a lot of it doesn't derive from like intention so much as just like need. Like it you know, a lot of these guys could have painted, you know, like, you know, brilliant oil paintings and stuff, but this was like their side gig. It was their day job. So like out of necessity, they came up with this like quick freehand, like, you know, really bold type, but it's type that like you can more easily do custom. And so like a lot of these things that like I love, like the B movie look, originated out of just sheer necessity. And yet there's like a beauty to it, right? And like there's something to admire in it that you can't get in like perfectly refined work. I don't know if that makes sense. So anyhow, that element of it I like about Power Comics too. So yeah, anyhow, thanks for the tip, Jim. That was a good one. All right, so we're at an hour mark. I am going to take a 20-second break. Might even refill this wine. And I'm going to finish this page, or try to finish this page. But we'll see how far we can get in about an hour. I think I'll cap it at about another hour. And then Frank said, you should call this stream The Power of Comics. I don't know if I want to encroach on their territory. They're doing it so good. And by the way, I am so stoked. Oh, Jake waved hi. How's it going, Jake? Jim, what you were saying about Ben Mora, I do think he's a genius. It's funny, up until then, he was like a guy that a lot of the cartoonists that I knew in Portland, we'd all kind of talk about like Night Business, because this is when it was coming out as floppies, like these self-published things. And we were all like, we would pass around the issues and like look at it and be like, is he meaning to, like, is this intentional or not? And it turned out that it was totally intentional. I'm finding from watching the Power Comics channel. So I really appreciate that tip, Jim. And I do think the guy is like a just crazy genius now. I thought he was like a crazy genius anyway, but I didn't know if it was like accidental or intentional. And now I'm like, oh, it's super intentional, which is hard to pull off. So anyhow, okay, I'm going to disappear for about 20 seconds and I will be right back. So please hang in there and don't go anywhere. All right. See you guys. Have 6 panels left to go. And then Gary heard the door. I was going to mention it. Yeah, we have a haunted house door for sure. It kind of squeaks really bad. I need to add some stuff to it to make it not squeak. And I'm so not a handyman that I'm not even remembering what that stuff is called. Isn't that terrible? My wife puts up with a lot. She is a wonderful wife and a creative herself, and she's back there like plugging away on on her next kids book, which her most recent kids book just popped on Amazon. If you guys are curious to see her books, look up My S. Kemble. Name is spelt the same way as mine on Amazon, and you'll get like this plethora, a crazy amount of children's books that she's illustrated for sale, which are really cool, and you should check them out. But anyhow, she also puts up with the fact that like I'm a total creative and I am terrible at like handyman stuff. Like I'm awful at it. I try, but I just fail a lot at it. So yeah. Anyhow, I'm a lucky man that she puts up with that nonsense. All right, like the squeaky door, that kind of thing. WD-40, thank you, Gary. And then Gary commented, I mean, I don't even know if it needs much more than just WD-40. I mean, you know, dude. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, fun times with that. All right, so here we go, and we're gonna get into the next panel. What are you working on? I don't know if Jim's still in, but if you're still here, dude, what are you working on, buddy? And then Frank said, the squeaky door of life. The profundity of what you just said, Frank, I think is pretty amazing. That might have to be the title of this live stream. The squeaky door of life. That might be my next graphic novel. Life's squeaky door. It just needs a little grease. Okay, so there we go. And we're going to do panel 4. And again, my goal is probably at most another hour. We'll see how this goes. Chapow, look at that. And then Jim was saying you're going to be my lucid dream soundtrack tonight. I love it. Have you guys ever done those meditation apps at all? Where it's like it'll say things like you're sitting at a stream or something like that, and then it'll kind of talk about like you're going to draw in a breath through your nose and then like breathe out through your mouth and like start slowly relaxing like your forehead, and you can feel all the tension. Like they'll kind of walk you through that stuff, and I'm no expert in it, so if I tried to do it, I'd probably just make people feel more tense and anxious. But they're kind of interesting, and I gotta say, like I've tried 1 or 2 of them like throughout the years, and there's been times where like I've had trouble sleeping because I think partially because I'm slightly I do think that might tie in a little bit to like autism, but it's like I definitely get my mind racing like late at night, and often will struggle like kind of getting sleep. And there's been times where I've like used like a meditation app or something, and it's like super helped with that. And then Jake was saying second person narratives like that aren't my forte. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's see here. Okay, we're gonna get into this next panel, you guys. Like beasts attacking prey. How about that? There we go. How are you doing, Jake? What are you working on, buddy? Okay. And then this is going to say, I want to find... Okay, that already was done. All right, so we're getting the rough part here worked out. And Jake said, I've been burnt out all week. No work done, and I'm preparing to move this week. Yeah, I feel like I was very close to the same boat. So it's just a weird thing, like writing that line when you're making comics. They can, at least for me, I definitely relate to that a lot because I definitely have had moments where I've experienced like pretty bad burnout, you know. Speaking of like kind of avoiding burnout, so I have like 3 scripts from friends that I'm supposed to review. And I thought I'd have a window this weekend, and that window has not appeared. So my hope would be, so I work like a half day tomorrow. So my thought is I'm going to finish this thumbnail. It's Corey's indie review show night, so I don't have to prep for that. Although I will say that should be pretty fun. So check out the indie review show tomorrow at irsagency.com. And also stay tuned on Indie Review Show because Gary Hodges will be doing a review, I think, on like the 28th, which is pretty awesome, of a very good book. Okay, so anyhow, all that being said, so that I don't burn out, I think I might read the scripts, at least one of the scripts, tomorrow that I promised to get done by the weekend. But I think that I'm going to need to do that tomorrow. And the funny thing is, if I was just reading it, I could do it, you know, tonight, like easily. But when you're reading to give feedback, like I want to be able to dedicate time to it. So I'll probably do that like first thing tomorrow when I get home, if it's not like 115 degrees. Which, ironically, I think out of everyone in the chats, like Gary probably can sympathize because Gary's in Arizona, and it's like I think most people might have trouble kind of sympathizing with living in a crazy hot desert, except for Gary, because I feel like, well, then again, Frank, you get pretty high heat in Texas, right? Or are you not in like a deserty spot in Texas? Because Texas is pretty broad. I don't know. I'd imagine it gets pretty hot though, but maybe not. But anyhow, so tomorrow when I get home, I do need to try to do the bike thing again. But that could get problematic if it's like 100 and something. Because that's not the best weather to like do bike exercises. Gary was saying, for reference, it's 100 degrees out right now, and it's almost 11 p.m. Yep. We're at about we're probably at about 98 out, and it's about 10. So it's a little, we get it a little bit better than Arizona, but not much. Like we get in the, you know, in the area of LA County that I live in, we get it, you know, easily past the hundreds almost all the time. But my recycling bin doesn't melt. I feel like Arizona, like, just takes where we're at and just cranks it up just a little bit further, because I visited Arizona once and it was brutal. I got off a plane and was advised by locals. It was like on a business trip. I'm sure I've told this story before, but I was advised by locals to just stay indoors because they were like, yeah, people from out of state just kind of pass out. And I was like, ha ha ha. And they're like, no, like, seriously, you probably should just stay indoors. But anyhow, so I don't know if it's Arizona bad, but we're like a smidge under Arizona in heat. And when you're in an area like that, it's really hard to do things like bike or jog outside, especially because I don't do exercise a ton, like in the mornings, like because I hate mornings. And so maybe I'll do it in the evening. Yeah, and then Gary was saying people die regularly. They go hiking and try to climb one of the mountains. They just don't get it. Yeah, it's nuts. Because like I said, when I was in Arizona, that was like heat on a different level. Like, first off, like the reason the plane, the reason I even talked to locals was the plane was delayed because the engine had like melted because of the heat. And so I ended up waylaid laid over there, and they put me in like a hotel nearby, and I had to like figure out how to get to the hotel and all this fun stuff. And what's weird is everyone in Arizona was just like, yeah, that just happens with planes here. Like the engines just fail because of the heat. I was like, what the heck? This is a normal thing. Yeah. And then Frank was saying, yeah, South Texas, so lots of heat. 83 degrees here, and it's 11:50 a.m. Yep. So I think we're all in kind of similar boats there. So that can be really bad. Let's see here. Okay, yes. Was that really all I needed in this panel? Was just a yes. Okay. It's kind of short dialogue is all I'm saying. And then Frank was saying, yeah, it's been like 90 to 100 degrees. Yeah, for us, it's been about, so I think for Gary, it's been in like above 110, which is nuts. For us, it's been like 105, 106. Today at the peak of the day, peak heat, it was about 107. When I went on my first bike ride, it was about 104. So it's just summer cranking up. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the slight downsides of kind of living here. Frank was saying people complain about the heat when it's 80 degrees. I laugh at them. Yeah. I will take the heat over like nonstop rain and snow any day of the week. Living in the Northwest, I realized as much as because I grew up in this valley and I was like, I absolutely hate this heat. I want to live in a place that rains all the time. And then living in the Northwest for like a year, just the first year we lived there, I was like, yeah, I don't like this constant rain thing. California, with all its faults, I still think I'll take California any day. Any day. All right. You guys, very exciting time here. I know it's nerdy, but if you've been following the stream, it's my second to last page. And this is what I have left for the first third of the book. So once I'm done with that, script-wise, I can move on to the next phase, which is pretty exciting. And then Jake was saying, rain and snow, let's go. Well, that's your jam, dude, right? It snows a crap load where you live, right? I would imagine. Although you're kind of by the coast, so I don't know. Because you mentioned like a coastline. But I do think it gets pretty chilly up there, right? Gary was saying, is inking the next stage? No, the next stage is lettering and panel borders in Illustrator, which will go swimmingly fast. The next stage after that will be gathering photo references, which should go fairly fast because I'm going to bulk the whole thing. Then it's final pencils, and then it's inks. But I feel like the second stage is like second and third phase are pretty quick. All right. Okay, so let's see here. Here we go. Just working this out. And I'm going to move this head down because I don't want too much text like below the character. And then Frank was saying, how was your Father's Day, Josh? I had a lovely Father's Day. It was really fun. What I'm also starting to realize is like my son's finally getting to an age where he likes to wrestle, which is kind of awesome. So, like we've been arm wrestling and stuff, and then I'll let him win every once in a while. Not that I'm like that strong, but he's 7. It's gonna take him to be at least maybe 8 years old before he can beat me at arm wrestling. If I don't let him. That was a joke, I think. I don't know. That's another like it's Father's Day, so I think I can get away with dad jokes. But yeah, it was pretty good. How about you, Frank? Was it good? And then I got chili dogs, and that was pretty awesome too. I like chili dogs a lot. They're terrible for you, but they're delicious. Oh, cool. Frank said kids called him today and yesterday for his birthday, and his sister invited him for a Father's Day dinner. Nice. How was the Father's Day dinner? And the nice thing about today was like, you know, Father's Day aside, it's been like a catch-up day, which was really needed. I was just very behind on stuff, and like it's interesting, Jake, that you brought up like burnout too, because I was very close to burning out on my projects. So I feel like this happens to me. I wonder. I'm kind of curious if this happens for you guys too. Oh, Frank said it was delicious. That's good. So you got a nice meal. Sounds awesome too. Yeah, I feel like one of the things that's tough when you're like at close to the finish line on a project. I'm kind of curious how you guys deal with that, but like I do feel like when you're working on a really big project and you're close to the finish line, it's tempting to kind of just slow the process down, because it's like you've been working really hard to kind of getting there, and then who knows? So, oh, cool. And then I just got a fresh version of one of the scripts that I need to read, which I will read, but I will do it tomorrow when I can focus on it. Because the nice thing is, like, I will probably work on my comic maybe on the after party after the irsagency.com. If people are like, what are you talking about? The Internal Revenue Service? You hang out with those guys? No, I do not. I hang out with the Indie Review Show, which you can check out at irsagency.com. Okay. And then this is going to be an enthusiastic yes. Jake said, no, I want the project out of my world so I can get sad faster and get onto my next project quicker. I like that. That is true. There is like a sadness when the whole thing's done. I am not near the finish line, but I'm near the finish line for the first third of the book, which is a weird finish line to have established. But I do feel like milestones are like a secret trick on any big project. You have to kind of set up these little celebration points. And it also helps you like remember to like enjoy the process, you know? Because if you don't have like a, hey, when I finish this page, I'm going to reward myself by eating a snack, or reward myself with like a glass of wine or whatever it is. It's like that kind of thing adds incentives and kind of celebration about it. It's almost like the purpose of holidays throughout a year, right? It's like time can kind of go by and start feeling routine and repetitive and stuff like that. Like the reason we have holidays is to like celebrate and remember and enjoy the process of life. And I think it's important to have that, like those little micro points that you're going to celebrate if you're going to work on long-term projects. Just little, at least for me. Gary said, I'm half joking, but therefore half serious. I'm beginning to realize I'm unhappy all the time, so I prefer to being unhappy and productive than unhappy and idle. Yeah. I think that's a little bit of the human condition there, too. I think we are generally unhappy. I think that's like the existential putty that we make stuff out of, right? Like, I mean, if people were always content, they wouldn't be making art. And I think if we made art that made us happy, I don't think anybody would be making art. And as a believer, it's like I feel like yeah, we're not meant for like perfect happiness in this life, you know? Like I think anybody would agree with that, you know? That's true. Milestones don't work as well as hitting a hit of creative high when getting over a mental block. Yeah, for sure. Or like honestly, it there is like this little video gamey satisfaction of finishing even a rough for a page, just like having a point of finish. It's just like, haha. Yeah, I don't know. But I do hope, Jake, that you start kicking out some more comics. It's time to kick out the jams. I'm gonna MC5 your creative process there, Jake. Okay, and then Frank was saying I got a lot of a rough mini comic finished yesterday. I had a problem with finding a good way to end it, but I went over it with Anna over a stream last night, so that was a nice breakthrough. Okay, cool. I'm gonna have to. Gosh, I gotta watch that stream. I've been so like just absorbed in the Power Comics wormhole, which, by the way, at some point I'm just gonna end up watching every video on that channel. It's so amazing. Yeah. But I do feel like milestones are important, and milestones can be like things about getting over a thing. I don't know if that makes sense. And then Jake said that reference was too old for my carbon date. So MC5 is like the Detroit Motor City 5. They're one of the foundational punk rock bands around the same era as like Iggy and the Stooges, like Iggy Pop and the Stooges. And but they're like outrageous, righteous, like rock and roll with like soul. And one of their songs is one of their most famous songs is one called "Kick Out the Jams." So yeah. And then Frank was saying, I like looking back at milestones, recognizing that I've completed a good thing and gotten over hurdles. So that I have trouble with. I know it's weird. That's probably healthy. But in that case, I'm like completely with Jake. Like I have trouble remembering anything I've accomplished in the past because I'm constantly working towards the next thing. And often I'll forget to even remember things that I do, which in the past in my life has really hurt like self-promotion, right? So even with 2 stories, like luckily I'm in the thick of book 2, so it's easy for me to remember book 1, but I have to remind myself to constantly be promoting it because if I just kind of went with my default, I'd just be talking about the thing I'm in now as opposed to the thing I just finished, you know? And then Jake said, I guess I got auditory homework. Yeah, it's good stuff. I mean, MC5's fun, man. It's a bunch of weird white guys with like giant afros who wear like crazy awesome like soul suits and just played just like tough as nails rock and roll. And they're one of those like staples of like Detroit, like the Motor City. Anybody I know from Michigan, like if I mention MC5, they're like, oh yeah. But yeah, they kind of had like a big impact, but still it's like a little more on the rock and roll end and funk. Like I don't know, it's hard to explain. You'll see when you look up their videos, but yeah, Jake, I think it might be your jam. And it might not. Okay. Oh, I like it. Jake was saying, I got into Bad Brains after having put them off for a while, and their ST was out of this world. Proto-punk wine. Word. Frank said, where can I get a copy of 2 stories for the cup of coffee and a bagel? That is actually kind of the price it's at right now. You can get it on Amazon. Frank, I need like half your promoting skills, man. I really do. All right, this is that cautious territory because I'm getting towards the end of the book, but I know I have a few pages, so that's good. Because like the final page is going to be a flip of the first page of 2 stories. Okay, here we go. Yes, this is another yes. This is going to be more of a kind of. Yeah, MC5 was one of those ones too. Like, I got, let's see, when I was in a little crappy garage band that like played around, we played a show at our friend's birthday party. This was like, I think I was like 16 years old. And this guy approached us afterwards and was like, "You guys sound like the Stooges." And I had never heard the Stooges in my life, so I had no idea what they were talking about. And so he came to like another show that we played at like a coffee shop or something, and like gave us a compilation of like the Stooges and MC5, and he was like, "Dude, if you haven't heard these bands, like you really should." And then that just was on rotation forever because it was just like, this is amazing. Like I'd never heard these bands. And so that's how I found out about it. So it's not like these are bands that like I naturally knew about or something. Like it was kind of something that, and then later on, as I got more into them, I was like, oh man, these are like essential like punk bands. But it's kind of like I was really into Fugazi, and I didn't know about Minor Threat till after being really into Fugazi. And then I was like, oh, okay. Minor Threat was like kind of a discovery after Fugazi, because like Fugazi predates, when I wasn't in high school in like 89, when 13 Songs came out. So it's like by the time I was in high school, I was just like, oh, this is awesome. Like 13 Songs and Repeater, and like, then I got into Minor Threat and I was like, oh, this is pretty rad too. And then it took me years to like actually, even with Minor Threat, like find out a step. So like the first Minor Threat stuff was like their more basic stuff that I got into. So anyhow, I think that's like kind of where I don't know. I think that's naturally the cool thing about music is you're always kind of discovering new stuff, and then like you kind of follow the rabbit hole a little further and you find out about other cool stuff, and I don't know. And then Frank said, you guys sound like the Three Stooges. I think that might have been kind of where the name like Iggy and the Stooges came from. Although I also think that like a stooge was like a henchman too at the time. So I don't know. I feel like it might have been like more of a, hey, we're trying to be dangerous here. All right, so here we go. And this is going to be another, yeah. So hopefully people will find that repeating Yaz thing funny when they read it. I do try, yeah, like in the first two stories, there's a scene where like the narrator says it was amazing, and then like it flashes to like somebody going, that's amazing. Like, I don't know. Sometimes repetition can be funny. And I feel like I pulled it off, but I don't know. Okay. Woohoo! Okay. I have successfully almost killed the second glass of wine, and I'm going to call it in about an hour. Well, not an hour, in about 15 minutes. So let's see if I can finish this page. But you guys have witnessed history on this channel, not history according to any historians, but it's fun times. I'm literally on the last page of the script now. So throughout all of these live streams, all of this scripts has gotten completed, and then now I'm on the last page of scripts. Not just a page, but a paragraph, which I'm pretty excited about. And one of the things I love about these live streams is you guys make it fun to actually work on these things. Frank was saying, comic history in the making. It's my obscure YouTube channel, Comics History in the Making. At some point, there will be a footnote in comics history about obscure YouTube channels. And they'll be like, there was this guy who was really excited about this book thing that no one's read. But is the price of a cup of coffee, which you are correct on that one, Frank. Okay. Rambling. And then Jake was saying, I prefer drinking and drawing than drinking and driving yourself mad. Well, that is probably better. Drinking and drawing is fun. There is a thing that my friend Ralph does a lot in LA called a drink and draw in Los Angeles. And it is super fun. And the only problem is they actually do like live streams. They might actually go back to doing meetups at Casey's in LA. But they've just been doing like drink and draws as live streams. And I haven't been able to do it because unfortunately it's on Thursday nights, right? And that's the same time as Artcasters. But it would be fun to join them. It is a fun thing to do. And then Peter said, this is the most colorful show I know. That's awesome. Thank you, Peter. Peter Palmiotti of Palmiotti. Did I say Palmiotti? Oh, my goodness. Palmiotti. Peter's awesome. He is working on the comic Retro, and you can check out his YouTube channel as well to check out cool stuff. And then Frank was saying Ralph Snart. No, it's not Ralph Snart. That would be a crazy last name to try to live down. Okay, so here we go. This is going to be an interesting one to figure out. Okay, I need to figure this bit out. This might be kind of a more complicated bottom panel sequence. And this might reference the first book a little bit. So I'm trying to find, there we go. Okay. I think I'm going to reference this a little bit for this bottom sequence, but this might be about the time. Well, we got about 10 minutes, but I think I'm going to do like a little infographic kind of sequence like this from the first book, but that's going to be down here. So an infographic sequence. So that's going to say, It's just always good to have like your pages handy too, so you can reference older pages, especially when you're working sequentially. It's just super essential to like constantly reference older work that takes place in similar locations, or if you're trying to do like reflection on the same themes, like to be able to reference your previous pages. Frank, I gotta check out your channel though. I'm gonna check out the latest thing that you talked about. I'm kind of interested in seeing you and Anna like kind of talk over the block you were experiencing at the end of the um, comic you were working on. What are you working on, Peter? How are you doing, man? How are the comics coming along? And then Jake was saying, referencing past scenes, do you mean like copy pasting a certain staircase? Yes, I think copy pasta is a good use of previous material, but it's also useful for other stuff. See, Frank, I think you should actually like try to do a stream while you talk through, kind of like block like that. I think that's actually really cool content. I know like Corey and I've done that where like we'll kind of hit like a roadblock, and it's kind of interesting. At least for me, it's interesting to kind of see people work that out in real time. Peter said, I finished another page of GN and I'm inking today. Got gigs outside of my passion project. Yeah, those are like the love-hate thing, right? Like we all love doing art professionally, but also when you're doing other people's stuff every time, it's like pulling away from your own stuff. It's kind of a, yeah, that can be cool and terrible at the same time. I don't know if that makes sense. Okay. Here we go. So I'm going to use that like a little graphic of like a little worker dude. So Jake, like, do you have anything on the dock for like things you want to work on? Because I know you have a lot of projects, man. All right, so we got this going on. And this is going to say, this is going to go longer. Jake, This might be quotable. He said, I've got IPs lasting for a lifetime and then some, but not enough IPAs. That sounds like a legit lyric to a song. Like, I've got IPs, but not enough IPAs. I like that. Okay. I believe that must be what the reference is there, Peter. Yeah, yeah, IPAs are one of my go-tos. Okay, so let's see here. I freelanced. All right, guys, we've got like 4 minutes left. I'm gonna hit a hard deadline at 2 hours. And then this will just have to be what it is. And that actually has a lot to do with burnout as well, where it's like if I try to push through and just like finish this page just for the sake of finishing it, like tomorrow I might like not work on a page at all because I just like push too far. The thought of making a Jake quote bot for Twitter, I could kind of dig that. I like this. This is a good quote. And then Frank was saying I need to do some pages for the latest Ninefold anthology. I have rough pages penciled that I need to work on. That's good. All right, so we're getting this wrapped up. And it's going to be And Gary was saying, calling it early. See you next time. Yeah, I'm calling it early too in about a minute and 30 seconds. So have a good night, Gary, and we'll see you probably, hopefully, on the IRS on Monday. So. All right, guys. And we are going to get close to finished, but definitely not finished. So no milestones to celebrate tonight. But we got close, and that's good enough. I'm going to go ahead and kind of start wrapping it up. So I would definitely recommend check out everyone in the chat's channels and artwork. Thanks, Gary, for showing up. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Jake. Thanks all of the folks who showed up in the chats for keeping me company. It actually got me further on this page than I thought I would get tonight. And yeah, that'll basically do it. So we're at the 2 hour mark. I hope this was enjoyable for everybody. We'll probably finish the thumbnails for this. Hold on a second. I actually need to mark this on my thing. All right. And we're on the last page. for roughs and thumbnails. So that's pretty cool. Pretty exciting times. Anyhow, thanks to everybody who showed up and hung out. And then Frank was saying, check out the Tarako Creative Cast, Salazar Art Nation, Jake Twister. You should follow on Twitter. Let's see. Peter Palmiotti is working on a comic called Retro, but check out his YouTube channel. And then Gary Hodges has a rad YouTube channel and also a really great series of comics called Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, DVSM. And he's working on the 3rd issue as we speak. So just really entertaining stuff. And also Jim Luhan showed up a little earlier and stuff, and check out his animations and his channel. And then I'm Joshua Kemble, and if you haven't yet, make sure you pick up a copy of 2 Stories. It's, as Frank put it, it's for sale for less than a cup of coffee and like a biscuit. So go out there and purchase this on Amazon.com. And I will see you guys probably tomorrow night. Actually, it's funny. We're ending before midnight, so it is tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Pacific time, and that'll be on irsagency.com. All right. And then I love that Frank said Dinosaurs versus Mars Bats is the knockoff. That's hilarious. So Bats from Mars. That'll be my next comic is that. So anyhow, see you guys on the next stream, and bye.